Hello, folks, and welcome to Ted, but not that one, doing a reaction video. And this is going to be a reaction to a video that came up rather randomly while I was sitting and thinking of what video I could make. I'm new at this. We all know this. I need to learn how to edit. Need how to use the OBS software. Learn how to use the DaVinci Resolve I've decided to try to use. And, well, I thought a reaction video was a good way to start working that stuff out. And this is going to be the result of that. So, today we are going to review, react, refute, argue with, make fun of a conspiracy theory video, I guess you could say it is. It's by the creator Everything Inside Me. It is about the supposed false history of St. Augustine, Florida. Now, if you don't know, St. Augustine is one of the oldest cities in the country. It's one of the first settlements in the U.S. It is just the historical town of St. Augustine is a very good description of it. Lots of history. Well, lots of very known history. And when I saw the clickbaity title of this, which is not St. Augustine, it's more like, I can't believe this hasn't gone viral. Or something clickbaity like that. But, yeah, it sucked me in. And then within a couple seconds I was pissed off by the video, which is why I'm making this reaction to it, because somebody needs to say something about it. It's that bad. Now, historians, archaeologists, cops, detectives, politicians, scientists, weathermen, the average person on the street has to keep an open mind. But to buy some of these, what this guy is peddling, your mind was so open it fell out, and you are a walking zombie of stupidity. Yes, it is that bad. I'll be stopping it along the way, making some observations, presenting some actual facts, and just, you know, trying not to become befuddled and struck dumb by the stupidity that I'm going to witness as I hit play. So let's get started with this. And okay, well, this starting picture is a picture of Victorian people, I would think, some point in St. Augustine. That is the Castillo de San Marco there. There's the dry moat. There's the outside wall. And this is just old-timey St. Augustine. This is probably taken from the period that most of this guy's react gas theories are going to talk about. Don't go and subscribe to it, please. No. It's bad. It'll rot your brain worse than sugar will rot your teeth. Frederick Dodson is the original author of this article, I guess. This is the one redeeming point in this article. Okay. FalseHistory.net is a site ran by Mr. Frederick Dodson. He has some interesting articles on there, as full of crap as this one is, and he has links to sell books and other things. I don't know if the creator behind Inside Me is Everything is actually Mr. Dodson or not. It's a faceless media with a AI voice yeah, it's just, that's pretty annoying too. And I don't know why, but it just is. Lots of things are oddly pronounced, so you will see what I mean. Well, let's keep going.
Who built St. Augustine? When I visited St. Augustine, Florida in 2022, my first reaction was surprise. The architecture was unlike anything I'd seen elsewhere, much less Florida. The buildings are said to have been built by Henry Flagler, an executive at Standard Oil, now Shell Oil, close friend and business partner of John D. Rockefeller. Originally built as hotels, they were allegedly completed within just 1 year.
Okay. Where does he get that? This just says built in 1888. And to be honest, that's not accurate. It opened in 1888, in January of 1888. Construction was started in 1885 on all of this stuff. There is no real mystery here other than this guy who's picking and choosing dates out of thin air to apply to things. And he'll talk about the architecture again, and I'll comment on it then.
1888. The structure in the front of this photo was once called Alcázar Hotel, and the one in the back Ponce de Leon Hotel. The block on the right was called Cordova Hotel. Flagler built 3 massive hotels beside each other within only 1 year. He must have been expecting a lot of guests. Alcázar and Ponce were designed by architects Hastings and Carr. The Cordova Hotel was designed by Franklin Smith. Franklin Smith was the person who inspired Flagler to invest in St. Augustine. At least, that's the official story. This image is one of the Alcázar Towers with a lion's head. The photo was taken in 1891. The lion motif is found throughout the city, for instance Lion's Bridge, built sometime after the Flagler era, in 1927. This image is the roof of the Alcázar Hotel.
Okay. Again, he's saying that this was all built in 1 year. This is the only place I've ever heard that claim. Ever. And, as far as this doesn't look like something in Florida, it looks very much like stuff in Florida. This is Spanish Renaissance Revival architecture. It was very popular at the time. A lot of it's gone, but it was built in a lot of places in Florida. And in probably Texas, Louisiana, and places like that as well. It's beautiful, but it's not weird. It's not out of place. He goes on to call it un-American. I think the name of the style being Spanish Renaissance Revival pretty much clears that part up entirely. And he asks a question that should make anyone laugh who thinks of who Flagler was, who Rockefeller was. Yeah, they don't fit the description of what he asks in the slightest.
While stunning to look at, there's something distinctly un-American about this architecture. Is this really how the cowboys of the 1800s would design their hotels?
Cowboys. Pencil pushers. More like it. I don't know. I don't know.
The Flagler Museum agrees the hotels were built and opened in 1888. The Alcázar Hotel today is called Lightner Museum. What kind of technology was used to erect so many places at such fantastic speed?
Money and people. Throughout history, if you're wondering why something was built quickly, 9 times out of 10, it's money and people are how it was built quickly.
Modern construction companies take longer for projects of similar size. Where did they get the workforce to build so quickly? According to the census,
Okay, he is going to go into some math here about workforce, broad projections about the workforce available in St. Augustine to build these hotels. problem is that all of his math is based on the approximate population of St. Augustine in 1880. Flagler had never been to St. Augustine until 1882 or 1883. And he liked it. He liked it a lot. So he figured he'd open a hotel. But nothing here really could handle either the traffic that he thought would come flocking to Florida as a vacation spot. He was ahead of his time. He was the first one to think it, and he was started to do something about it. That's why he built so many damn hotels. He planned big. And yeah, in 1880, there was 2,300 people in St. Augustine. By 1890, there was close to 5,000 people living in St. Augustine. This guy's math does sound right, but he goes from the wrong time period for the building and doesn't take into account that people can travel on railroads. And that's what they did.
The population of St. Augustine in the 1880s was approximately 2,200 people. If we exclude women, we're left at 1,100. Take away old men and boys, it leaves us with 500 men who could potentially have
Don't take away the boys. This was the 1880s. Kids worked.
constructed the buildings. That's assuming that none of them were not already busy with other jobs. A more realistic assumption is that of the 500 able-bodied men, 50 might work in construction or be looking for employment, an optimistic guess. Neither 50 nor even 500 would have been enough for all the places Flagler is said to have built. Where did Flagler get his workforce? How many were involved? Records that show how all this was made were not readily available at the time of this video.
Okay. This is based on an article that was printed at some other time. So, does that mean that one article didn't have the information you were looking for, buddy? Or you just couldn't find it, you didn't look for it? I remember history books talking about Flagler bringing people in on trains for all sorts of things. And that's how he did it.
Almost everything we know about St. Augustine is informed and influenced by Rockefeller associate and Standard Oil executive Henry Flagler. Unfortunately, the Rockefellers and their associates aren't the most reliable sources of information. John Rockefeller was the richest man alive at the time. There are dozens of books that have documented the shady and criminal business practices of Standard Oil. John Rockefeller is also known as the father of the pharmaceutical industry. John's father was a known con man.
Okay. Yes. John Rockefeller, Standard Oil, had some shady business practices. Some stuff that went, while it wasn't illegal at the time, it became illegal because of them. But why bring John Rockefeller's father into this mix? What sounds like a small-time con man is the one behind hiding St. Augustine's history? That makes complete sense. I mean, this next section of the video has nothing to do with anything. It's just annoying.
This is what History.com says about John's father, William Rockefeller. William's money had come from a slew of shady business ventures, from pretending to be a deaf and blind peddler, to posing as a doctor to hawk patent medicines. Suspected of horse stealing and even indicted for rape in 1849, William had been an unstable father figure. For years, he had lived under assumed names and was known as Dr. Livingston before his death. He had a big jug of medicine, and he treated all diseases from the same jug, an associate recalled, remembering that the supposed doctor would laugh about his concoction, magically being able to cure anyone willing to give him money. Despite attempts by the family to distance themselves from their father, the Rockefellers had known their father's location for years, and had been sending him money.
Wow. Family loyalty. They're horrible people for that.
John D. Rockefeller spent a lot of money to brush up the public image of the family and pretend he had nothing to do with his father. Even so, many of his criminal activities came to light. For example, in 1911, the Supreme Court found that Standard Oil was in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, an illegal monopoly, and ordered it broken into 34 separate companies.
Okay. Yes, they bribed politicians, they legally spied on their competitors, and did all sorts of heinous shit. The fact that Standard Oil was in violation of that particular Anti-Monopoly Act was because that Anti-Monopoly Act was written because of Standard Oil. Standard Oil was a company, a huge monopolistic company, before that, a good decade before that came into law. And then it still took 20 years for it to work through the courts to enforce that law upon them. The dishonesty and the way of only giving partial story is infuriating. Yes, they did bad things. Yes, they did unethical things. But don't make it sound like from the very beginning it was an illegal act to have a monopoly. It wasn't. People just didn't like it. Then it became illegal, and then it was broken up. That is how making laws, government is supposed to work. Still not sure how anything to do with Rockefeller and Standard Oil has to do with hiding the history of who really built St. Augustine.
Standard Oil under both Flagler and Rockefeller also bribed politicians, illegally spied on competitors and politicians, secured illegal railroad discounts, blocked competitors from using railroad lines and other resources, and more. Today when I walk through St. Augustine, I see Henry Flagler's name on street signs, murals, statues, in churches, colleges, everywhere. In his day he had been exposed as a ruthless criminal, but over time, they managed to turn him into the man who built Florida, a heroic figure we owed the whole state to.
I don't know where he gets that particular view of Flagler. I remember learning about Flagler in school. I remember learning he was a robber baron, that he was a ruthless businessman and not a particularly nice guy. And yes, he spent his money to build a legacy. Built buildings, got all sorts of stuff named after him. But most people in Florida and around the world don't know crap about him, don't think he's a hero, don't think he's anything, and wonder, why is everything named after some guy named Flagler? And if they look it up, they will find the truth that he's not a nice guy. You don't have to come up with weird-ass theories to try to besmirch the guy. He did plenty of it in his life, and it is well documented.
Before I continue the video, please give a like if you learned something.
We have learned not to trust the internet.
Also, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you won't miss any update. Finally, watch until the end to avoid any misunderstanding.
Yeah, misunderstanding. We need to avoid that. Badly. That's why I'm making a video, because this guy didn't understand anything.
Thank you. While visiting, I saw they had placed brand new cannons on the upper platform and also around the fort. The interior rooms were decorated with beds and clothing of what Spanish soldiers' barracks would have looked like in those days. The cannons, cannonballs, bunk beds, flags and clothing were all added to the structure to build a narrative that the Star Fort was built by Spanish soldiers.
Yeah, the narrative that's well documented in history books.
I asked a tour guide if these things had been found at the fort. He told me they hadn't, and that it's part of the staging. They also do reenactments there, where cosplayers dress as Spanish soldiers. Notice the size of humans beside this massive structure. Star forts, we find them worldwide, in the desert of Australia, in the Pacific, in Russia, in Persia, in Arabia, in Indonesia, in Europe, in Africa. They were part of a long-forgotten culture that replicated its design on all continents. We have to ask whether it was really the Spanish soldiers that built the structure. I'm
Okay. Star forts are all over the world. They have been expanded all over the map because for a very long time, 300 years, they were the state of the art defensive fortification in the age of gunpowder. That's it. They were built by every power in the world that wanted a defensive structure. They're also known as bastion forts. I think they were invented by Michelangelo or Leonardo, one of the two. I can't remember exactly which one, to defend Vienna or Milan. That's something like that. It's well known. It's documented. That they are not some holdover from an ancient culture. Some of the later videos in this series, it is a series of 5, talk about other things involving the Star Fort and redirecting energy and stuff like that. All of it crap. It's a star because it gives no blind spots for enemies to get into and hide from the defenders. That's it.
not saying they weren't capable of building it, but they just as well may have already found it there upon their arrival. They may very well have placed cannons there and slept there in bunk beds. But did they actually construct it? And if so, why didn't they construct anything of similar size?
Why didn't they construct anything of similar size? Because it was a small settlement. It was never huge. Even at the peak of tourism, it wasn't a massive city. They just didn't need anything else that big. They built it big for defense. That's why. Everything else was small. Everything else was made out of wood. Everything else burned down multiple times in the city's history. Yeah.
The walls of the Star Fort are packed with seashells. That's perhaps not surprising. Most castles and forts had water surrounding them for protection. There's a drawbridge leading to the castle, meaning it was built to be surrounded by water. But I found that the higher walls, and even towers, also had petrified seashells packed into the stone. The whole place must have been underwater long enough to get seashells stuck to it.
Okay. 2 things. Yes. Lots of fortifications had moats around them. That's what he's talking about. No. Not all moats had water. Not even most moats had water. They were a ditch. That's it. They made it harder to dig under. They made it harder to attack the walls of the fort. It's not hard to figure out. And as for the seashells, they are not attached to it. They are what it's made out of. It's made out of coquina. It's a kind of sedimentary rock. It's like a concretion of sand, broken seashells, stuff like that was on the seafloor at some point in the past for hundreds of thousands of millions of years. And then it was dug up and turned into a castle by Spaniards, African slaves, Native American slaves, free people, which they had a bunch of both going on there. And yeah. No, it wasn't. The entire thing was not underwater after it was built. The entire thing has never been underground as far as I know. It has always been there. Everybody's known it's there. It was never in ruins. It was never built on top of. It never had to be rediscovered. There is no mystery to the fort.
If you guys find this video interesting, I'll make a part 2. Now, it's time for me to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this video?
Do you think he wants to hear my thoughts on the video?
If you found it interesting or informative, please consider giving it a
If you found it informative, please consider going and reading up on the subject and finding out how wrong everything was.
thumbs up and sharing it with your friends and family. Remember, the more people know about these important topics, the better.
I agree. Unfortunately, the person who wrote the article, the person who made this video, don't know anything about this topic. Seriously, it's bad. Just don't Don't do stuff like this, folks. Don't fall for stuff like this. It's, I can't stress how angry this made me when I first watched it. This is me calm about it. Me not being worked up about it anymore. This is my third or fourth try trying to record this because I got so irritable about it. I messed up a lot. So that's how bad this was. The other videos are the same stuff. He finds pictures that he says has signs of being doctored in them and says that that's the problem with old pictures, and then he finds other old pictures that he can't find any reference to the buildings in them and does not think about that picture having something added. You can't even tell if it's a photograph or a real good drawing because of the copy he has isn't good. He's basing a lot of stuff on weird crap like that. Nothing is right. Just nothing in the whole thing. It's insulting to people in history. It's insulting to people who see it. It's insulting to actual historians who are working on discovering some of the missing stuff in the missing history that actually happened in St. Augustine. Knowing the history of the world and where you come from and the people around you is important. It's important to get it right. It's important to do it respectfully. This horseshit is neither. Well, I guess all I can say is thanks for listening to this TED Talk. Have a good one.